I made a video a few weeks ago about EQing headphones to the Harmonic curve, and I got the following comment. Complete scam. You can't push something that is not there. You can cut things only. So what I understand from this comment is that you can never boost using an EQ. Let's break this down. Now, the problem I have with this claim that you can only cut frequencies and not boost frequencies, that is assuming that boosting frequencies, according to this comment, is boosting something that is not there to begin with, which is not the case. And that is also assuming that someone that is boosting with an EQ is trying to add more frequencies to a signal. In that sense, you can't push something that is not there. Yeah, that's correct. You can't. Not with an EQ anyways, you know. There's something else you can do for that, which I'm going to address later, but an EQ is not going to do it. An EQ is not going to add more frequencies to a signal. What an EQ is going to do is add more volume, basically, and not more frequencies per se, not more harmonics. It's going to add volume, okay, to a band of frequencies you select so you can hear that band of frequencies better, louder. Okay, this is what an EQ is going to do. It's not going to add anything more than increasing the volume of that band of frequencies. That's it. And the other way around will be to just cut those band of frequencies, not remove them, just bring them quieter in your mix. And this is how you tone shape a sound using an EQ. Basically, EQ is like a bunch of volume faders, like we have on the mixing console or within your DAW, that you bring up and down to tone shape your sound, basically. And the best example is if we look at a graphic type EQ, you can see it right away. It's a bunch of little faders that are fixed to a band of frequencies that you increase or decrease the volume of, basically. Okay, so think of it this way. Now, if I go back to EQing my headphones, now a pair of headphones will give you the full frequency range, okay? When I EQ my headphones and I boost some frequencies, I'm not trying to boost something that is not there, but I'm trying to hear better some frequencies that are there to begin with. I can already read some of the comments asking about phase shifting when you EQ, especially when you boost using an EQ. Will boosting using an EQ increase the amount of phase shifting and make your signal sound worse? I'm gonna break this down in a very simple way without diving into the whole phase shifting thing. It's way more complex than what I'm gonna say here, okay? But first, phase shifting is part of what EQ is. You know, the minute you're gonna boost or attenuate frequencies, there's going to be some sort of phase shifting happening, which doesn't matter when you EQ one single instrument. Phase is how EQ works. So when boosting using an EQ, don't worry, there's not going to be any extra phase shifting added to what is already there, and it's not going to make your sound worse, okay? To prove this to you, let's jump in Cubase. I'm going to show you something pretty cool. I have an organ recording that I duplicated to have an exact copy of that same recording, that same channel. On both channels, I inserted the same EQ. On one of the EQ, I added a low shelf boosted by 2 dBs at 500 Hertz. On the second EQ, which is inserted on the second channel on the copy, I did the opposite. I added a high shelf filter at 500 Hertz, but this time around, I made a 2 dB cut. At this point, the only difference would be the amount of volume because I'm boosting with one EQ and cutting with the other one. But is there a difference in sound if I level match the two tracks together, which I did on this test by activating gain match on both EQs. Basically, this test is called a null test. So the goal is to try to figure out what is the difference between those two recordings, which is a copy of the same recording, but with two different EQ filters. And once I'm level matched, what I'm going to need to do is to reverse the polarity on one of the channels. And what I'm going to hear are the differences between those two channels. So first, without switching the polarity on one channel. Okay, now I'm going to switch the polarity on the second channel. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay, so if we go back and look at the EQs we had on my example, I added on top of that an EQ curve analyzer to analyze the outcome of the null test. Okay, so now you have a visual representation of the results. Honestly, the null test does it And this is only to show you what it looks like basically for the EQ curve, which is in green, which is the exact EQ curve on both sides. And same for the phase curve right here in pink, okay? We have the same phase shift on both channels. So what that means, it means that both of these channels, even with the different EQs I applied, the minute they are level matched, the outcome is exactly the same. So this is just to show you that when we talk about EQ, we talk about volume of different bands of frequencies. And that's it. So by keeping that in mind, let's say I'm mixing a track and I end up doing a bunch of cuts, you know, on my signal, like this EQ, for example, okay? On this one, the cuts are all over the place. Now, at this point, the best practice would be to reset everything to 0 and bring down the general volume of that channel and then start EQing. And at this point, with the volume a bit lower, I'm probably going to end up doing only minor EQ moves, and that's it. So boosting with an EQ is not trying to add something that is not there, but just increase the volume of what is already there. Talking about EQ, I have a free gift for you. Go and download my free EQ frequency guide. I'm gonna leave the link down below. And also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. That actually helps me a lot. Back to the video. The decisions I make on cutting or boosting using an EQ while I mix is done in the context of the mix. Adding clarity can be done by boosting a bit of high frequencies, but can also be achieved by cutting in the low mid section, or even the bass frequencies, depending on the signal I'm mixing. Okay, so by understanding that we're talking about volume, the mindset is going to be a bit different when starting to work with EQ. And always EQ a signal according to its relation with the rest of the mix. Now, when it comes to adding more to the signal, like we saw, an EQ is not going to add more frequencies to your signal. What will, though, is harmonic distortion. That can be achieved using effects, processing like saturation, distortion, tape emulation plugins, you know, anything that can generate a harmonic distortion that will add a bit more to the existing signal. And there's also EQs that will give you more harmonic distortion, like analog type EQs. They will tend to generate more harmonic distortion. And this is why if you do this type of test, the null test we did earlier in this video, with a Pultec EQ, for example, the results, you might hear a bit of differences when comparing two identical channels, doing the same type of test I did with a very clean EQ. And the differences are going to be due to the harmonic distortion that EQ produces. Now, the differences between a very clean EQ and an analog type EQ with the harmonic distortion one can produce compared to the other can be very subtle, you know, but still it's going to add to the color and vibe of an analog type EQ compared to a very clean EQ. And that is the reason why. Same when you're using distortion, you plug your electric guitar into an amp, you boost the gain, that creates a bunch of harmonics, okay, which creates a new sound, you know, new frequencies to the initial signal. And that is generated in this case with the overdrive, creating distortion that creates new frequencies on the same signal. It's not the EQ that does that job. Now I can talk way more about saturation. I actually made a full video that I'm gonna link right here about mixing with saturation. If you're a bit confused about how saturation works, you need to watch this video. Until next time, take care, my friend, and see you.